What if I told you that by the end of this lesson, your speaking skills will be 10% better, 20% better, 50% better, or even 80% better? I promise that by the end of this lesson, you will have the plan that you need to dramatically improve your speaking skills. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. Imagine you told your friend that you're learning how to play piano. And you told your friend that you spend time every day watching videos on how to play piano, studying piano theory books, and even listening to piano music. Your friend says, well, that sounds great, but how much time do you spend playing piano? And you reply back and say, oh, I'm not ready to play yet. I need to learn more before I start playing. Your friend will, of course, be confused because the only way you learn how to play piano is by playing piano. Of course, learning about piano theory will help you improve, but you will not reach your goal until you sit down and play piano. At first, it will feel awkward and uncomfortable. You will sound terrible. You will make a lot of mistakes. And guess what? This is exactly how you learn piano. The same goes for your speaking skills. If you want to improve your speaking skills every week, you need to practice speaking every week. Yes, it will feel awkward and uncomfortable. Yes, you will make a lot of mistakes. Yes, you will pause and hesitate. This is exactly what needs to happen for you to improve. The more you practice, the more you'll improve. But let me be clear, you must speak if you want to improve your speaking. Do you agree with that? Does that make sense to you? If it does, put that's right in the comments. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that someone needs to listen to your friend playing piano in order for your friend to improve their piano skills? If your friend is playing piano in a room alone with nobody listening, is your friend still practicing? What do you think? Yes or no? Put your choice in the comments. Did you say, well, yes, of course my friend is still practicing, even if my friend is playing piano in a room alone with nobody listening? Do you agree with that? Well, then, doesn't it make sense that you can also improve your speaking skills by speaking in a room alone without anyone listening? Can you prepare for a job interview by practicing how you're going to answer a question in a room alone? If you practice answering job interview questions in a room alone, will you feel more confident answering that question in a job interview while people are listening to you? What do you think? Yes or no? I hope you said yes, I will feel more confident by practicing what I'm going to say, even if I'm practicing alone. And if you answered yes, then it also makes sense that you can improve all areas of your speaking by practicing alone. You can practice ordering a cup of coffee alone. You can practice asking for directions alone. You can practice introducing yourself at a party alone. Not only can you practice these things alone, you should practice these things alone. Even if you have a teacher or a speaking partner, that person is only available for a few minutes a day or week, but you are available to yourself every second of every day. If you agree with me so far, then you must also agree that you truly have no excuse to not practice and improve your speaking skills. Now, I understand that speaking alone can be boring. So here are 3 easy and free strategies to make speaking alone fun and engaging. Number 1, random question generator. These are free websites that randomly generate endless questions that you can answer to practice speaking alone. Once you generate a question, make it your goal to talk for 1 minute. And then you can generate another question, and another question, and another question, and practice speaking for as long as you want. Number 2, ChatGPT. You can ask ChatGPT to start a dialogue with you to practice speaking. So here's the prompt that you can use. I want to practice speaking English. Write a dialogue where you provide only one part of the conversation so I can respond to practice speaking. So as you can see, ChatGPT replied with a very simple question. Hi, how are you today? And now you can hit the microphone button on your phone and then vocalize your reply and submit it to ChatGPT. So let me do that now. I'm great. I'm recording a video to help my students improve their speaking skills. Now notice that ChatGPT asked me a follow-up question. That sounds like a fantastic idea. What kind of speaking exercises are you planning for them? So let me reply to this. I'm planning exercises where they can practice speaking alone. And notice ChatGPT again asks me a follow-up question. And this will keep happening. ChatGPT will keep asking me questions to get me speaking. And I don't know what ChatGPT is going to ask me next. So this truly is like if you're at a party and someone asks you a question, you don't know what they're going to ask you. Now, at any point, you can change the conversation and just give ChatGPT a specific topic. Let's discuss movies. So now notice ChatGPT asked me a question about movies. Number 3, narrate your day. To narrate means to explain what happened. For this activity, you're going to vocalize your actions throughout the day. You can do this anytime you're alone or anytime you feel comfortable speaking out loud in public. Let's say I'm at home alone and I'm working at my computer and I decide I want to take a break and have a cup of tea. It will take me approximately 5 minutes to make a cup of tea. This gives me 5 minutes to practice speaking out loud. I can summarize what I've already done today. I can summarize what I still need to do today. I can talk about tea and discuss my favorite flavors. I can compare tea to coffee. I can share my opinion on beverages. It doesn't matter what you say. It only matters that you practice speaking out loud. You can easily do these 3 activities multiple times per day. And you can easily get 1 hour or more of speaking practice every single day. If you practice speaking in English every day for an hour a day, would you not agree that your speaking skills and confidence will improve? I'm sure that you would agree that yes, my speaking skills will improve. So put yes in the comments below. Remember that this video is on improving your speaking skills specifically. Of course, you need to expand your vocabulary, improve your grammar, improve your listening skills, and learn correct pronunciation. But knowing the theory of a grammar rule does not mean you can confidently use it in your speech. Just like knowing the names of piano keys or knowing piano theory does not mean you can sit down and play piano. And that's why your daily speaking should be done as a separate activity. This is a smart strategy that will help you see greater improvements in your overall fluency in less time. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. Have you ever felt stuck in a conversation because you couldn't think of the right word or you didn't know how to respond? Let's fix that. Today, you'll learn how to speak fluently in English about anything. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. Of course, to speak fluently in English, you need a wide range of vocabulary, correct grammar, correct pronunciation, and listening skills. I have hundreds of videos on my channel to help you improve all of these areas every week. In this video, you'll learn how to speak fluently in English about anything with the language skills you have now. Step 1, active listening. When people speak to you, do you find yourself thinking about what you're going to say next as the person is speaking? Maybe you're thinking about what verb tense you need as the person is speaking. Or maybe you're even thinking about some task you need to do later on. Maybe you're thinking about what to have for dinner as the person is speaking. Does that ever happen to you? Be honest. The answer is probably yes, isn't it? How can I say this with such certainty? Because I'm guilty of this too. So if this ever happens to you, put that's me in the comments so I'm not all alone. Now, when this happens, you can say that your mind wanders. That's the term in English. Your mind wanders. Or that you zoned out. You can say that as well. But it's very difficult to speak confidently in response to what someone said if you weren't even listening in the first place, right? To improve your speaking skills, you need to become an active listener. Not only will this help you with your English fluency, it will also improve all your relationships because listening to someone, truly listening to someone, is a sign of respect. When someone is speaking, pay full attention. To help you do that, focus on their lips, focus on their eyes, focus on their face as a whole, focus on their body language. And when your mind starts to wander, because it will, you need to instantly bring your attention back to the person. This takes work. As you're listening, you will naturally think of questions you may want to ask, points you want to clarify, or details you want more information on. So when it's your turn to speak, you will have so many ideas to prevent those awkward silences and to help you keep the conversation going. Step 2, be interested more than interesting. What do I mean by this? Have you ever had a conversation with someone and you can tell that that person is more interested in talking about themselves than they are in talking to you or learning about you or showing interest in your day, your life, your dreams? What if you met someone and when you told them something, you felt like they truly listened and you felt like they were truly interested in what you just said? I imagine you would think very positively about that person and you would want to spend more time with that person. Am I right? When you're having conversations with people, show that you're interested in them. How can you do this? Well, the easiest way to do this is by asking questions. Let's say I just got back from a 7-day trip in Texas. This is true. I did just get back from a 7-day trip in Texas. I want you to think of one question that you can ask me about my trip to show me that you're interested in me. So pause the video if you need and think of one question, just one question you can ask me about my trip. Do you have it? Do you have a question? Feel free to leave your question in the comments. Okay, now I want you to think of 2 more questions. So for a total of 3. Again, pause the video, take as much time as you need. And feel free to leave your questions in the comments. I promise I'll answer as many as I can. Now let me ask you, was thinking of 1 question, 2 questions, 3 questions, was that easy for you or difficult for you? What if I asked you to think of 50 questions you could ask me about my trip to Texas? Could you do that? Maybe you think that's not possible, that's too difficult, but I promise you that I could easily come up with 50 questions to ask someone about their 7-day trip in Texas. And I can do this because I've practiced being interested in others by asking questions. The easiest way to think of questions is to think of categories. So for a trip, the categories could be transportation, food, weather, entertainment, people, nature, likes, dislikes, recommendations, future travel plans. And for each category, you need to think of some questions. Now you could easily come up with 5 questions to ask for each category, and there were 10 categories, so that's a total of 50 questions. And you could keep a conversation going for hours and hours and hours just by asking questions. And you'll naturally have more questions based on the person's answers to your initial questions, right? But of course, you can't just ask questions. That would be weird. You need to share your ideas too. And you need to do it fluently and confidently. So step 3, structure your ideas. The easiest way to sound fluent, confident, and professional while speaking is to structure your ideas. Think of this video. This video follows a very specific structure, as do books, movies, meetings, everyday conversations. I didn't start this video by saying, tip 1, improve your listening, because that would be confusing. It would be like starting a new book, and the first sentence is, she had to work late to finish the report. Who is she? Where does she work? What report? Why is this important? What are you talking about? Before you start talking, you need an introduction that prepares your listener for what you're about to say. You can have a more formal introduction like, today we'll discuss 3 strategies to improve your listening skills. Or you can have a more casual introduction like, I'm so excited for my 7-day trip to Texas. Now you know I'm going on a trip, it's 7 days, it's to Texas, and I'm excited. Think about everything I communicated with this simple introduction. Now you'll have your body. This is where you'll share your main ideas. So for the first example, I would share the 3 strategies to improve your listening skills. And in the second example, I would give you more information about my trip to Texas. The body is where you can include details that describe the who, what, when, where, why, and how. These are the WHs. Now, to think about what to say in the body, I would simply think of the WH questions, but answer it. Why did you choose Texas? Who are you going with? Where are you staying in Texas? The answer to these questions would form my body. So I could say, I'm going to Texas because I've always wanted to visit the southern US and experience their warm hospitality and delicious southern cuisine. I also really want to see cowboys walking down the street. How cool would that be? My husband and I are staying in San Antonio, where we found an amazing Airbnb right on the river. And then we're heading to Austin for some nightlife, and we found an Airbnb right near downtown. Now that's my body, so now you just need a conclusion. This video can't just end after this sentence. That would be awkward.
What just happened?
I have to say something to let you know I'm done talking. I could summarize what you just learned and say, now you know how to speak fluently about anything. And for my Texas trip, I could say something like, I know it's going to be a great trip. Now, if you follow this simple structure, remember introduction, body with WH answers, and conclusion, you will easily expand on your ideas and realize that you can speak fluently about basically anything. And remember, while the person is talking and hopefully structuring their ideas, you are actively listening. And you're going to keep the conversation going by being interested and by asking questions. How to speak English so good, native speakers are impressed.
I'm impressed.
You'll learn 9 tips. Number 1, master the basics. It certainly will not impress anyone, not native speakers, not your teacher, not other students, if you say, I go store now. I'm sure you know that the correct way is to say, I'm going to the store now. But maybe you forgot that article. I'm going store now. Even forgetting one small word, the article, the store, or using the wrong verb tense, the present simple, I go, instead of the present continuous, I'm going, makes a big difference in how you communicate and how others receive your message. But don't worry, you don't need to master every single grammar concept in the English language. You only need to master the basics. There are 12 verb tenses in English, but only 6 verb tenses make up 96% of speech. This is why you should focus first on mastering the basics. Make sure you have correct sentence structure, basic grammar, and then you can keep improving and keep learning more advanced concepts. Number 2, use contractions. I know what you're thinking, but contractions are not slang. Contractions are grammatically correct. Contractions are not unprofessional. Contractions are used in professional and formal English. Contractions help your speech sound more friendly, fluid, and natural. Let's take this common greeting. If you say it without the contraction, it will be, how is it going? That doesn't sound impressive because it doesn't sound natural. A native speaker would say, how's it going? They would take how is and form a contraction, how's. How's it going? Repeat after me. How's it going? Now you'll impress a native speaker. Number 3, connect your words. A lot of students will pause between words, but this does not sound natural. It sounds very robotic and it makes your English level seem more beginner than it probably is. So if you pause between words, it definitely won't impress native speakers. Let's take the expression we used before. How's it going? So let's say you apply tip 2 and you use that contraction. How is how's? But you pause between those words. How's it going? This won't impress a native speaker. You need to combine those sounds. So repeat after me. How's it going? We have how's and it, so we can combine that together and it sounds like how's it? How's it? How's it going? And even though there is no connection between it and going, I still don't pause between them. How's it going? Repeat after me. How's it going? So if you connect your words, you will definitely impress natives. Number 4, use idioms and expressions. Congratulations, you already learned one that will help you sound natural and impress natives. How's it going? You can use this instead of asking, how are you? Or how are you doing? How's it going? And because you know how to pronounce it, you will feel confident using it. There are so many idioms and expressions in English, and you can just add a few every day or every week to help build your vocabulary so you impress natives. Let's start with some basic ones. Instead of I'm tired, what could you say? That's an alternative way, more of an expression. You could say, I'm beat. I'm beat. Instead of I'm going to bed, I'm hitting the hay. Or instead of you did a great job, you rocked it. Most of my students already use this one because I use it with my students almost every video. You rocked it. You did a great job. So if you think I'm doing a great job with this video, why don't you show your encouragement, show your support, and put rocked it in the comments to practice this so you remember it so the next time you can use it with natives to impress. And if you don't like that expression, find a different one. You can say you rocked it, you killed it, you crushed it, you nailed it. All of those are commonly used and will impress natives. Number 5, use phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are not slang. Phrasal verbs are grammatically correct. Phrasal verbs are not unprofessional. Phrasal verbs are professional, friendly, and natural. And sometimes there is no other way to communicate an idea. Sometimes you must use a phrasal verb to correctly and naturally communicate this idea. Let's take a look at this image. What are the people doing? Maybe you could say they're leaving the bus. That is a direct translation. They're exiting the bus. Again, a direct translation. They're getting off the bus. This is the correct and natural way to communicate this idea. In this case, the phrasal verb get on to enter and get off to exit is the only word used to communicate this idea naturally in English. So you must use this phrasal verb to impress native speakers. Otherwise, it will sound like you're using awkward direct translations from your native language. Number 6, understand syllable stress. Since this lesson is on speaking, you must understand and use the concept of syllable stress, which may not exist in your native language, in order to speak in a natural way that impresses native speakers. In English, in every word that's more than one syllable, there is a stressed syllable and an unstressed syllable. Let's take this picture. What is this? Say it out loud. What is this? Did you say banana? Or did you say banana? Banana. Using the correct syllable stress will instantly make you sound more natural. So whenever you're learning a new word, you must learn the syllable stress. The phonetic alphabet tells you specifically where the stress is, and you can listen to an audio dictionary and listen for the syllable that sounds louder and longer. Banana, louder and longer. Na is the stressed syllable. Ba and are the unstressed. Banana. That's how you can say this word and impress native speakers. Number 7, vary your tone. Did you know that only 7% of communication is the words you say? 38% is your tone of voice, which represents the rising and falling of the sound of your voice. So you may already understand this concept because when you ask a question in English, a yes or no question, you have a rising intonation, which means the tone of your voice rises. Would you like a banana? Banana. So my tone comes up at the end. But notice how my tone changes when I say, I hate bananas. I hate. My tone comes down. I love bananas. My tone comes up on love. Imagine you just said, I hate bananas. I love bananas. Notice how different that sounds. The words are exactly the same. The only difference is my tone. In every sentence you say, there should be a rising and falling of your tone. This is something you can practice by recording yourself and listen back and ask yourself if you can hear those rises and falls. But you also don't want it to be too dramatic because that will not impress natives. Number 8, add body language. You already know that 7% of communication is your words, 38% is your tone, and that leaves 55% for, you guessed it, your body language. Let's look at this picture. Of course, there are no words, so we can't hear the tone of voice because there are no words. But these people are communicating a message. What are they communicating? I'm sure some emotions instantly come to your mind. Some negative emotions instantly come to your mind. They are communicating even though there are no words. How about now? This is the same couple, but notice they're communicating an entirely different message, even though there are still no words, no tone of voice, because there are no words. It is only their body language that they're using to communicate. So when you record yourself to practice your intonation, why not use the video recorder instead of just audio so you can look at yourself and look at your body language and ask yourself if any improvements could be made. Number 9, my personal favorite, smile. There are so many studies that show the importance of a smile. Did you know that even studies where people were talking on the phone, salespeople were rated higher when they delivered their sales script while smiling compared to while not smiling, even though this was a phone conversation? A smile is obvious even when you're talking on the phone, because when you smile, it raises your tone, which makes you sound more friendly. Imagine you go into a job interview and you say, "Hello, nice to meet you. My name's Jennifer." "Hi, nice to meet you. My name's Jennifer." Simply by adding that smile. Imagine I started this video and said, "Today you're going to learn 9 tips. Today you're going to learn 9 tips." Of course, a smile is very closely related to your tone of voice because, as I said, it raises your tone, and you need the appropriate body language to go with your smile as well. So when you're recording yourself and you're recording yourself with video, you can look back and watch yourself as you smile. Now, it is not natural to smile the entire time you're talking, so definitely don't do that. But as a fun exercise, you can review this video and review it for my tone of voice, my body language, and my smile. And why not rate me? I'm sure I still have areas to improve as well, and I'm constantly trying to improve how I communicate because I also want to impress native speakers and non-native speakers. I want to impress everyone with my message, especially you. Last week, I asked my community what area of their English they're struggling with the most. Now, before I reveal the answer, what do you think they said? Did you say speaking skills? Well, you're right. 61% said they're struggling with their speaking skills the most. This was not a surprise to me at all because I hear this from my students every single day. Now, in another poll, I asked my students why they're struggling with their speaking skills. The number one reason at 42% was a lack of vocabulary. 36% said it's feeling shy, nervous, and scared. 11% said incorrect pronunciation, and 10% said a lack of grammar. And many students added their own comments and said it's a lack of practice. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to give you some advice. My honest advice, my brutally honest advice about why you're struggling with your speaking skills and how to fix that. First, let's talk about a lack of vocabulary because this was the number one choice at 42%. Now, on the one hand, I agree with this statement because if you don't have the words, you're not able to
form sentences. You can't open your mouth and share ideas because that takes words. So I do agree with this, but on the other hand, I think you have a lot of vocabulary and you just don't realize how much you have. For example, think of how many words I'm using in this video. If you can understand these words, even if you only understand 50%, and you count how many words I used in this video, you would be quite surprised by how much you actually know. Or just open up the first page of a textbook or a children's story in a language that you don't know and see how unfamiliar it looks to you compared to anything you would look at in English and how many words you actually know in English. The reality is that most native speakers, our daily speech is formed by a small number of words, maybe 1,000 to 2,000 words in an average daily use. So if you learned 3 to 6 new words per day, in 1 year, you would have the vocabulary that you needed to have basic conversations. Now, more realistically, you probably need about 20,000 or 35,000 words to fully communicate your ideas on a wide variety of topics. But think of how many you already know. So if you divide that by 2, the number of words you already know, you only need to know about 25 new words per day for 1 year to reach that full vocabulary. Another part of the problem, if I'm being brutally honest, and perhaps I'm even part of this problem, is that teachers like myself, we release these videos saying you must know these 10 C1 expressions to speak confidently. But the reality is, if I'm being brutally honest, that's just not true. Sure, you can absolutely add these words to your vocabulary, all the words that we claim are must know, need to know, learn these now, but it isn't actually true. You don't actually need to know these words. They're useful to know, but are they must know if I'm being brutally honest? Most likely not. And another problem, probably why you think it's a lack of vocabulary, is you're too focused on forming more advanced sentences, C1 sentences. Now, I make these lessons for you on C1 vocabulary because you need them for your IELTS. You need them for a job interview. You need them if you're writing an academic paper or you're giving a formal presentation. But in your day-to-day speech, the reality is, if I'm being brutally honest, you don't need them. I don't use the word utilize in my daily speech. I might use the word utilize 3 to 5 times a year, whereas I use the word use every single day. I probably use it 20 times in this video. So on the one hand, although I agree that it's absolutely important to expand your vocabulary, I also feel like you probably have enough vocabulary right now to start forming sentences and to start speaking, and you can just add on more words as you go every single day. Now, a tip for you is to actually not learn words, to learn entire phrases, because we don't communicate with individual words. You need to know how to use that word in an entire sentence, a phrase. So focus on learning phrases that you can learn one phrase and you can instantly use it in your vocabulary, in your speech, and you'll already feel more confident communicating. Now let's talk about feeling shy, nervous, or scared, because 36% of students said this. In my honest opinion, I feel like this is probably the biggest barrier, mainly because this isn't an area that's focused on in language learning. The focus is on learning vocabulary, learning grammar, learning correct pronunciation, but it's not about managing your emotions, understanding your mindset, understanding what it's like to speak in public and providing strategies to fix that. My brutally honest advice to you is that it's totally normal to feel shy, nervous, and scared. Those feelings most likely aren't going to go away in the near future. They're going to be with you, and you need to learn how to open your mouth and speak even with that feeling in your stomach, even with that nervousness. You can't let that feeling in you, in your body, or in your mind, you can't let that prevent you from speaking. You need to take action now, and the more you practice, the more you speak, the smaller and smaller that feeling will become, but it will likely still be with you, if I'm being brutally honest, even after you've been practicing your speaking for months or years. I still get that feeling of nervousness even when I sit down to record a YouTube video and there is no one around me. I'm not even in public. I still feel nervous, and I think that's a good thing because it shows that I care about making a quality video for you. I care about your feedback and your reaction to this video. So just know that it is totally normal to have that feeling. And honestly, the best way to fight that feeling is just by practicing. Practice, practice, practice now, and that feeling will get less and less. Let's talk about a lack of grammar, because 10% of students say it's the reason why they're struggling. The thing you need to remember is that when you're speaking in the real world, you are no longer a language learner. In a classroom environment, you are a language learner. If you open your mouth to speak, the teacher will stop you in the middle of speaking to tell you about a grammar mistake. This makes you focus on your grammar a lot, which I understand is important when you are in a classroom environment because you're there to improve these specific areas. But the problem arises when that same student goes out into the real world and still focuses on their grammar when they're speaking. When you're speaking in the real world, you need to focus on the ideas you're sharing. You can make a grammar mistake. That's okay. Native speakers make mistakes. If you were to watch this video very critically and look at every single sentence, I'm sure you would find grammar mistakes because I'm speaking without notes. I'm opening my mouth and speaking, and it's just normal for human beings to make mistakes. Native speakers make mistakes, and you can make mistakes too. Now, of course, you do want to work on improving these areas, reducing those mistakes, but again, you can't let that prevent you. You have to start speaking with the skills you have now. And the best way to really know what areas of your English, your grammar, your sentence structure you need to improve is to record yourself. And just like I suggested, if you watch every part of this video, you would find mistakes. So you can do the same thing for yourself. You can record yourself telling yourself about your daily routine, and you can watch that video and you can listen line for line and try to understand what mistakes you commonly make. Choose one, the mistake that keeps coming up. Maybe you forget to add that S on he, she, it, verb conjugations in the present simple, and this is your area to improve for the entire week or how long it takes you. So get out there, start speaking. Just know that native speakers aren't listening for your mistakes. Your English teacher absolutely is, but in the real world, native speakers are not. Now let's talk about incorrect pronunciation, because 11% of students said this was the reason why they're struggling. This is an important one, and I find is often neglected both by teachers and by students. So when you learn, let's say 10 phrasal verbs, but if you don't learn how to pronounce them correctly in different sentence structures, different verb tenses, then when you go to speak and use that phrasal verb, if the person replies back and says, sorry, what did you say? I didn't catch that. Can you repeat that? Well, then honestly, you didn't communicate successfully. And it will really feel like you're struggling if the person you're talking to doesn't understand you. So this is an important area and one that you should spend time on. And again, if you're already recording yourself for speaking practice, one, to focus on what areas of your grammar you need to improve, well then just add on a third and listen for your pronunciation. This could be very difficult for you because you might not know if you're pronouncing a sound incorrectly. So the best thing you can do is listen to audio dictionaries or listen to a native speaker actually say a specific word or phrasal verb, and then doing shadowing practice. So repeating after that speaker, that will help you improve that area of your speech that you need to learn correct pronunciation. So this is something that you do need to focus on, but you'll get feedback. How do you know if you need to improve this area of your English? Because people will say two things to you. They'll say, "Can you repeat that? I didn't understand you," something like that. So you know, if you get that a lot, you know this is an area you need to improve. Another way you'll know is if you're talking and the person says, "Oh, where are you from?" If your accent is so recognizable that they know you're not a native speaker, so they either ask you where you're from, or they say, "I bet you're from Mexico. I bet you're from France," because they hear such a distinct accent that they know you're speaking English with a Mexican accent or with a French accent. So if you hear those two things, it might be a sign that you need to improve your pronunciation. If you don't hear those two things, then maybe your pronunciation is great as it is. Now, remember I said in the comments section, a lot of students said it's a lack of practice. Definitely, if I'm being brutally honest with you, this is true. And this is where I hear a lot of excuses. Do you know what the most common excuses are for a lack of practice? Well, I live in a non-English speaking country. I don't have anyone to speak to. I don't have time. These are the three most common excuses. I'm sure you know some other excuses that you've either said yourself or you've heard other students say. Well, just recognize them for what they are. They are excuses. And how do I know this? Because there are so many students who do improve their speaking skills, who learn to speak confidently in non-English speaking countries without a study partner, without speaking to anyone else. So if students are doing this all the time, then it's absolutely possible for you as well. So maybe the first thing you need to do is just recognize that they are excuses. They're not the truth. Because if you feel in your mind that it is true that you can't improve your English speaking skills alone, then you won't even try, because you've already determined that it's not possible. So for right now, I want you to accept that, yes, I can improve my English speaking skills alone, and then commit to practicing speaking, opening your mouth and speaking in front of a mirror or by recording yourself and doing this every single day for 2 minutes. That is absolutely something you can achieve. Now let's talk about a lack of time. This is an excuse I hear from students. But the reality is, if I'm being brutally honest, we all have 24 hours a day. Much of that time we spend sleeping, but regardless, we all have the same waking hours per day. It's not a lack of time, it's that right now, improving your speaking skills isn't a priority for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to prioritize spending time with your family over improving your speaking skills, that is absolutely fine, and that's your decision. But don't pretend like you don't have time. Just say, right now it isn't a priority. I want to focus on being the best mother I can be, being the best father I can be, or I want to focus on learning how to play guitar, or I want to focus on spending more time with my cats, something I definitely prioritize. But that's okay, but just be honest with yourself. Don't sit here and say, oh, I'm struggling to find the time, because the time exists, you're just not allocating the time because it's not a priority, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you are listening to this and you think to yourself, but it is a priority, I need to improve my English speaking skills so I can send my kids to a good school, or so I can get a better job, well, then you need to reflect on that, and you need to adjust your schedule to allocate the time to your speaking skills if it truly is a priority. There is a lot of advice online for free to help you become fluent. But what if that advice isn't helping you? What if that advice is actually preventing you from becoming fluent? A lot of students come to me because they're struggling with their fluency. They can't speak confidently, they can't understand native speakers, they're frustrated and they're stuck. They spend a lot of time trying to become fluent, but it's just not working. In this video, I'm going to share some horrible advice that I see online that's preventing you from becoming fluent. First, let's talk about grammar. Of course, you need correct grammar, correct sentence structure in order to form sentences. But I see a lot of advice online that tells students that they need to memorize all verb tenses. Or I see videos where you need to learn all verb tenses and use them in a specific period of time. But did you know that native speakers don't communicate with many of the verb tenses that exist? So if you spend all your time studying these verb tenses, but then you go to speak and you don't actually need these verb tenses in your speech, that time you spend studying isn't helping you. The reality is that the majority of our speech, 90% of native speakers' speech, comes from about 5 different verb tenses. You would be a lot better off mastering these 5 verb tenses and learning how to use them fluently and confidently, rather than overwhelming yourself by trying to master every verb tense in English. Now let's talk about vocabulary. Again, of course, you need words. You can't communicate without words. You need a wide range of vocabulary. But do you need to memorize a list of words that all start with A? Do you need to memorize all the phrasal verbs with the word down? And this is where I see a lot of students make mistakes. They get overwhelmed by downloading a list of 20 phrasal verbs with down, or 50 or 100 phrasal verbs with down. And they think they need to memorize them all at once, and somehow knowing all these phrasal verbs with down will help you communicate. But when you're in a meeting, when you're in your IELTS, when you're having a natural conversation, how likely is it that you're going to use all those phrasal verbs with down? And that's the mistake, is memorizing random lists of words rather than focusing on full expressions, full phrases that you can use to communicate in the most common situations that you need to communicate in. Let's keep talking about vocabulary, because a lot of advice I see online tells you that you need to replace an everyday word with an advanced C1 word. Again, this is creating a lot of overwhelm and frustration for students, and they think that they aren't fluent, they can't communicate because their vocabulary is filled with more everyday words rather than advanced C1 words. Now, the reality is that yes, C1 words, advanced vocabulary, can be very helpful to you, but in extremely specific situations, like when you're in a job interview, which happens maybe a few times a year, and then you don't go to another job interview again for 5 years or longer. or when you're taking your IELTS or a language exam, or if you're giving a very formal presentation. Yes, this vocabulary can be helpful, but you have to remember that 99% of the time, you are communicating in the real world. And 99% of the time, you don't need to use these C1 words. So don't overwhelm yourself by thinking you need to replace the vocabulary you have now with more advanced vocabulary. That simply isn't true. Now let's talk about your expectations, because online, I see a lot that suggests you can't make mistakes when you're speaking. If you make grammar mistakes or if you have an accent, that you won't be able to pass your IELTS, you won't be able to get a job in an English-speaking country, you won't be taken seriously by native speakers. But that is creating stress and overwhelm because it simply is not true and it's not helping you. You absolutely can make mistakes. And not only can you make mistakes, you absolutely will make mistakes. It's guaranteed that you will make mistakes when speaking English because it's not your first language. And the reality is you make mistakes in your first language as well. So of course you'll also make mistakes in additional languages that you've learned. That's okay. But a lot of the time, students think that they can't make mistakes, or if they're making mistakes, they're not ready. They're not ready to apply for that job. They're not ready to take the IELTS. And there's this advice out there suggesting that you need to wait. You need to wait to take your IELTS, to apply for a job, to try to move to an English-speaking country, to just use your English in social situations. You need to wait until you've learned all the verb tenses, until you've learned C1 vocabulary, until you've replaced all your regular verbs with phrasal verbs, until you've eliminated your accent. But that just simply is not true. And what this advice does, and if students accept this as the truth, what it does is it creates a situation where students are just focusing on input. And they're getting input, input, input. They're consuming the language, but they're not using the language. They're not getting output because they feel they're not ready. They feel their English isn't good enough. But this is a mistake. You need to start getting output, start using your English through speaking, writing from day one, right from a beginner. And if you're not a beginner, if you've already been learning English for many years, well then start today. Don't even wait until tomorrow. The second you finish this video, you can start changing that by using your English. And I see a lot of advice online that suggests that you're going to get to some point in the future where you'll be finished learning English. But that is also just not true, and it sets this expectation that, again, you need to wait now because your English isn't good enough now. When you get to this undetermined point in the future, then your English will be good enough. Then you can start speaking, applying for jobs, or pass your IELTS. But the thing is, there is no point in the future. You will always be trying to improve your English. You're a lifelong learner, so you need to accept that where you are today is where you are today. It's what your level is now, and you need to start communicating with the language you have and just make effort every day, small effort every day to improve and improve and improve. And as you go on, your level will get higher and higher, but you'll be communicating the entire time. So those are some mistakes that you want to avoid when you're learning that can create frustration, but in this lesson, you'll find a better method. So watch it right now.